we're huge fans of The Villain Gets the Girl, so he continues to be in the story because he has his own book, basically. It matters. It matters. I was just like laughing, but also like mad and just like also happy. Hi everyone and welcome back. If you're new here, my name is Mabel and this is Mabel Journals, where we talk about books and we talk about journals. In this video, we are going to go over the books I read in January and in February. I'm also going to do a journal flip through of those months in my new reading journal. And yeah, so grab your coffee, I have mine, and some water, some snacks, whatever you want, and let's talk about books. So here is the pile of books that I read in January and in February. I think January I read 4 books, and then February I read 5 books. So the first book that I started reading actually in January is the Shatter Me series. I've had this series for a really long time. I just have never gotten into it. I've never had an opportunity to get into it. One of my really good friends actually messaged me a TikTok video of just like a reel of someone. I wish I had it so that I could post it. If I find it, I'll put it somewhere. But basically the video was talking about how the villain gets the girl in all of the books that it was talking about. And we're huge fans of The Villain Gets the Girl. So this book we follow, first of all, we're in this dystopian world where humans have basically taken over a lot of the resources and depleted them, and so now the government is further stepping in and taking over, and it's kind of like a communist society. There are different like headquarters, different locations. There's no longer countries, it's just like headquarters type of situation. I forget what it's called, districts. Our main character, Juliet, is isolated because she has some sort of power that is lethal to other people. So basically if anyone touches her, they die. And she can't control it, right? So even if you touch her and she doesn't want to hurt you, she's still gonna hurt you. And so Juliet is isolated. She doesn't have a roommate in this facility where she is. She's kept there by herself. In the beginning, it's basically her, you know, writing in her notebook, crossing things off, talking about how she feels and what's going on. And she talks about how she gets a new roommate. And she doesn't know if she's supposed to be like the one that hurts him, like if they put him there because they want her to hurt him, or if they put him in there because he's gonna hurt her and he has a power that's even worse than hers. And so this guy is in there, his name's Adam. There's rebels, you know, who go against this communist society. There's the communist government, basically. I'm calling it communist government because it just seems like communism to me. But that's not necessarily what it is. It's just the government has completely taken over all of the resources. They decide where people live. They decide how much they get paid. They decide on all of these different things. And so that's basically where we're at. And so Juliet has absolutely no idea that this stuff is happening because she's been locked up for years. So she only remembers what she went through. And so Adam comes in, kind of changes the picture, and it goes from there. But the most important thing to realize is we're in this dystopian world. There's the government taking over, and then there's rebels, and those are the two opposing sides. And that's basically where it starts off. The back doesn't really give a lot to go from, and it's a lot of twists, a lot of turns in the whole entire series. But I really think that it's worth going in not knowing anything, because I went in like, what does this eye mean? Like sometimes the eye's closed, sometimes the eye's open. Like, what does it mean? Like, is she the eye? Whose eye is this? But I definitely recommend reading this book with absolutely no, other than what I told you, I think that that's as far as you should know. Shatter Me is the first book. The second book is Destroy Me. And in Destroy Me, we actually follow Warner, who is the son of the Supreme Commander, basically the government. And so we follow his point of view and we kind of get to understand who he is. And then the next book is Unravel Me, which I also read and is annotated. And this one continues on the story. Then after Unravel Me is Fracture Me, which is Adam's point of view. And Adam's point of view is the guy that I told you was locked in with Juliet in the very beginning. And so obviously he continues to be in the story because he has his own book, basically. I recommend reading the novellas. Like, I 100%, like, I know that it's like, oh, it's a novella, it doesn't matter. Like, it matters. It matters. Read the novellas. If you were ever to believe anyone ever telling you to read a novella, I'm telling you right now, read the novella because it just made a world of a difference for me to understand these books. So what the publishers did, or what Tahereh Mafi decided to do, author of this book, is unite Destroy Me and Fracture Me into one book, call it Unite Me. So instead of me buying Destroy Me and Fracture Me, I decided let me just buy Unite Me. This one's not annotated because I read the novellas on Kindle. I was able to find them on Libby because they were all there, my library. And so Shatter Me, Destroy Me, Unravel Me, Fracture Me, and then if you want to get both of them in one book, Unite Me. That's basically the beginning of that. So all of these books, technically 4 books, but they're in 3 books here. I annotated the first 2. That is what I read in January. Like literally this is all I read in January. Next, February, I started off strong with Ignite Me, which is technically the 3rd book in the trilogy, because the trilogy is Shatter Me, Unravel Me, and then you Ignite Me. This one continues on the story. This one is probably the best one of all 3 of them, in my opinion. But again, read the novellas in between. So Ignite Me has the biggest twist at the end, but it doesn't end there. Oh, actually. So then 4 years later, Tahereh Mafi decides, you know what? Let's restore the trilogy. Let's continue the story. And you'd think, you know, if you're starting a trilogy again 4 years later, you're gonna need like a really good story. She did it. She restored it with Restore Me. Restore Me is the 4th book in the overall series, but it's in my heart, it is technically the 6th book. Because again, Destroy Me, Fracture Me, very important books. I 100% recommend that you read those books because it makes a world of a difference. And everyone I hear online talking about the series says that you definitely need to read the novellas because they make a big difference, especially the last one, which I think is Believe Me, and I'm not there yet, so I'm not gonna talk about it. But anyway, Restore Me definitely restored the series. A lot has happened in between. Again, I'm not gonna say anything because I don't want to like reveal big plot twists because a lot of that happens, but just know that to me, this has tropes of like found family, triangle, but not in a bad way. She does fall for the villain, and it's just really good. I loved it so much, and this one is my favorite, more than Ignite Me, honestly, but Ignite Me was really good. I think Ignite Me really closed off that trilogy really well. If you want to stop there, you can, but if you're, you know, if you're cool and you know what's good for you, you'd continue on the series with Restore Me, which, like I said, restored the series again. Even if it was 4 years later, I think that what happens in this one blows it out of the water. And if you don't continue the series, you just gotta. I don't remember if I read this right after, and I'm not gonna check my journal because it doesn't matter. I don't wanna confuse y'all, so I'm just gonna keep going with the Shatter Me series. Then the next one is Shadow Me. That's where I'm at. That's the last book that I read in the Shatter Me series. I guarantee you that the series is worth it. I think it's a very quick, very easy book to read, easy books to read. If you are in a slump, this will definitely get you out of it. I think it's definitely worth it. And if you don't want to read it, audiobooks is really good. I've been listening to a lot of the audiobooks in these, and that's how I'm able to get through them a lot more quicker. But it's easy to follow. The magic system is easy. The world building is easy. It's not a lot of world building, honestly, but it is a lot of like character development, a lot of character build, and a lot of, you know, plot twists and stuff like that. And again, I loved it. I'm enjoying it. I'm having fun. I can't wait for the next one. It's great. Now we have 3 more books that I'm going to talk about, and that will end this book portion of everything. The next book I'm going to talk about was actually sent to me by Forever Books, I believe, and it is Never Blow a Kiss by Lindsay Levice. I hope I'm pronouncing that right. But this one was like Bridgerton meets like a mystery book or something like that is what they told me. It's a historical romance, and it follows our main character, Emily. Emily is Emily Leverton. And so Emily was born in a family that has a bunch of issues, poor, and has a lot going on. She did some shady things when she was younger because her father kind of forced her to. And so she has been kind of just like running from society ever since, trying to like do her thing and survive. And so she's found by like this governess of spies, I think, a secret society of governess spies who basically help women and try to solve those mysteries. You know, we're talking about these like 1700s, 1800s, when women had no rights basically. And so she is one of those women who is obviously suffering from the repercussions of not being able to be a man during these times. And so the secret society of governess spies is just basically women who are given the role of governesses so that they can spy for the society and kind of like find out what's going on in between. And so she accepts the position because she's like, you know what, I did some terrible things when I was younger. This is how I can like repay that and like feel better about, you know, my life. Then she meets this detective named Zach, who also came from poverty but was able to build himself up. I forget what he did that made him like super rich, but he solves cases now for Metropolitan Police, trying to solve this mystery, find out who's behind the unaliving of all of these women. And along the way, he meets Emily, and it's just super cute how it all ties together. Like the title ties into how they met and like what they call each other. It's super cute. Like they have like this like connection, but at the same time she also has a lot of hidden secrets and he like slowly finds out about them. But she's also different from anyone that he's ever been with because of course he's rich now, but like he still has that like wanting to be with someone who came from a similar background to him and understands the struggles. So altogether it was very cute. I think I gave this a 3.5. I enjoyed it. I thought it was really fun. Definitely recommend, especially if you're into Bridgerton, if you're into historical romances. I think this is a very like modern type of romance, to be honest with you. It's not modern technically, it's not contemporary times, but just like the thinking involved and like what the women are thinking in this time is very modern-esque in my opinion. And so that's kind of why I call it that. But all right, the next book I read is Sex, Lies, and Sensibility. It's based on sensibility, what is it? Sense and Sensibility? Something like that. I forget what it's called. I was gonna read that before I read this one because I did that for her other book, Pride and Protest. I did read Pride and Prejudice before I read Pride and Protest, and they had very similar connections to each other. This one I didn't do that, and I kind of wish I did a little bit just to kind of understand a little bit how everything was put together. But at the same time, I still enjoyed it. I had a really good time with this. So basically we follow Nora, and Nora and her sister Yane are at the will of their father who passed away, and they realize that they are illegitimate children of his, and they are like his secret family. And so his like open family received a bunch of the money and the funds and the house and all of the stuff, including the house that they lived in. And so her dad left them some kind of money, I forget, and then also left them like this broken down inn. And their job is basically to make this inn function and make money off of it so that they can pay the foreclosure. And the foreclosure I think is in like 7 months or 8 months or something like that. So it's just very, very close, but they do accept doing that. And then when they get there, they realize that it's like near a like Indian reservation, Native American reservation area. And that's where they meet Bear, who is Nora's love interest. And so it kind of goes from there. The other aspect of this is that Nora has her past too. I don't want to give everything away, but Nora basically has her past. She had certain things that were leaked and that kind of ruined her position. And so that's kind of where it goes from there. It is spicy. A lot of drama happens, like a lot of like chaotic drama happens. And in my opinion, that's fun. I enjoyed that. I was just like laughing, but also like mad and just like also happy, and it's just like, oh my god, I can't believe this happened. You know, I kind of like went through all of the motions with this book, and that's part of the reason why I enjoyed it so much. I gave this a 4-star. I thought it was great. I'm so excited for whatever she comes up with next, and I have it right on my shelf right next to Pride and Protest, right next to her other book. Definitely recommend. Last book I read, I think, is probably my favorite of all of the books I've read, just because it really got me like more into reading. I feel like I was like reading so slowly and just taking my time. Slow for me, you know, because I, like, as you know, I read like crazy. And so I just felt like I was just taking my time because I was, you know, just like, oh, I have to read. Oh, I want to read, you know. So this next book kind of just like reminded me like, hey girl, like reading's your outlet. Like, what are you doing? So I love that for me. And I love that for this book. So it is The One, the Only Bride by Ali Hazelwood. This is my first Ali Hazelwood book. I have, I think, all of her books and I've not read any of them. So this is definitely a good start. This is a paranormal romance. It takes place in this world where there's werewolves, there's vampires, and there's humans. And so our main character, her name's Misery, which I can't think of a better name than Misery, honestly. It's actually a really pretty name, other than what it stands for. But anyway, Misery is, she is the daughter of like this like very high up councilman, and so he made the decision of having her be the, I forget what it's called in the book, but it's basically when you give, like if you make a pact with the other entities, like in this case it was humans, they get a human to stay in the vampire world, and the vampire world has to give them a vampire. That, and it has to be people that are important, right? It has to be like a very high standing vampire person that, like, if something happens to this vampire, like they would lose their. Misery is the one who's given to the humans, and the humans give them someone as well. And so Misery learns the life of the humans. She becomes like super close with one of her friends who's a human, and, you know, grows up there, likes it so much that she ends up staying there because her relationship with her father isn't great. And then her father hits her up, like after years of her being like in isolation and outcasted into the human world, finds her and says, hey, like, you need to get into this marriage of convenience because we need to do this alliance with the that's what they call the werewolves. And so she's like, no, I'm not doing that, like blah blah blah, because she was in the middle of like solving a mystery at home. Like her best friend is like missing and she's like trying to figure out where she is. But then they tell her the name of the guy that she's gonna marry, and she's like, all right, I'll marry him. And I'm not gonna tell you why she made that decision, because I was surprised as to why. And it is part of like why the book is so cool and interesting. But you have like marriage of convenience, normal, you got like all these different like entities. Now it's spicy, it's good, the banter is amazing. The spice is really, really good too. It's just so interesting. And I definitely think you should read it for sure. I definitely recommend. I think it's really good. I think it took me a little bit to get into in the very, very beginning, but this was one of those books that I was getting on a plane and I only brought my Kindle, and then I was like, I don't want to read off my Kindle. So I went to like the library, which, well, not the library, but like a bookstore that like was right across from my gate. And I saw this and I'm like, I'm gonna pick this one up. And I picked it up. And so yeah, I very much enjoyed it. These are all of the books that I read. So now that you've heard my rants about all of them, I am going to now let you look through all of the spreads that I created. And if you haven't already seen my flip through of my new 2024 reading journal, I definitely recommend that you watch it before you watch this flip through, because it is very, very different. And yeah, I absolutely love it. I think it's amazing. I love my journal and I'm having a blast. And without further ado, let's take a look at my 2024 reading journal spreads for January and February. So that concludes this whole journey. Y'all have been through my January, my February, you saw the journal, all of that. I hope you enjoyed. I hope you had a great time. And if you did, subscribe and like this video. Leave a comment of which book you plan to read, if you've read one and what you thought. And you know, all those social media things that y'all know how to do. I'm also on TikTok. I'm also on Instagram. And I also have a Goodreads and a Storygraph. So follow me on all of those if you're interested to see what I'm reading. Yeah, thanks for sticking through till the very end. Like I said, leave a book that you enjoyed, that you read that I mentioned, or a book that you want to read that I mentioned. And I will see you in the next one, y'all. I am so happy that I was able to get this to y'all. And yeah, without further ado, see you on the next one. Bye.